Ashwin. Welcome to Better Tech. Can you kindly introduce yourself for our audience?
Sure, thank you. Folks, my name is Ashwin Ram. I'm a cybersecurity evangelist. I'm based in Sydney, Australia, and I suppose I've been in the cybersecurity industry now for approximately 15 years. And for the last 10 years of that, I've spent my time at Checkpoint. I started my career as an analyst, and then sort of moved into professional services, where basically I did a lot of post sales engagements. So think about things like installing and upgrading cybersecurity infrastructure for organizations, typically enterprise organizations. And then I sort of moved into a pre-sales environment where I was a technical sales lead. And now I'm a cybersecurity evangelist, reporting into the office of the CTO. So I do a lot of cybersecurity conference talks. I talk to a lot of media. I do podcasts such as this one. I engage with a lot of executives and try and help them understand the threat landscape so that they can make better, more insightful cybersecurity decisions around their cyber resilience strategy. So that's me in a nutshell.
So it really sounds like you're enjoying what you're doing. So this cybersecurity evangelist role, is this something that you always wanted to be in?
It's absolutely my calling. It's something I sort of fell into, but I'm absolutely loving it. I love the idea of being able to go and help people make smarter decisions around cybersecurity. And I'm really blessed that I work at Checkpoint because I've got this access to this amazing Checkpoint research team, which gives me this insight into the threat landscape and what the threat actors are planning on doing, and the trends that we're seeing in the industry. And then I get to go in and disseminate that information to the rest of the world.
Okay, great. So Ashwin, what was the 2020 cybersecurity landscape like in a nutshell?
In a nutshell, it was, I suppose it was both. It was quite unique, and at the same time, it was quite predictable as well. So I suppose unique in the sense that, of course, COVID-19 happened. And so we saw a lot of cyber attacks that leveraged COVID-19 as a theme. We saw millions of phishing attacks. We saw hundreds of scams using COVID-19 as a theme, which is not surprising in a way, I suppose, because threat actors do look to use the news of the day. What we saw was quite interesting with COVID-19, however, was that as this pandemic progressed, threat actors started to use the various different stages of the pandemic within their phishing campaign. So what I mean by that is, at the beginning of the pandemic, we saw that the world was panicking around and wanted to find out about the symptoms and where the hotspots were. So threat
Yeah.
actors used that in their phishing campaign. And then, as some governments move towards stimulus packages. So that became another area for the threat actors to focus on. So I suppose that was quite unique. Another thing that was quite unique was just seeing so many people work remotely, right? And one of the things that many organizations, of course, struggled with was their digital transformation programs. They rushed their programs, especially their cloud and their remote access projects, and they did it with this mindset of just do it. Let's make the mistakes. It doesn't matter. We'll ask for forgiveness later. So there was this lack of governance and proper assurance process in place. So that was kind of something quite interesting because we haven't seen that in previous years, not to this scale. And I suppose the other thing that was really interesting was with the lockdown of all these international borders, many governments started to focus on cyber espionage because you can't actually carry out espionage in the physical world due to the border closures. So there was a lot of attention, and there still is a lot of attention on cyber espionage as another means of being able to spy on countries. So those are some of the unique things that we saw. And then there's, of course, there was a lot of predictable stuff, right? Ransomware, we saw that. One of the interesting things, by the way, around ransomware was, for the first time, we actually saw someone die because of a ransomware attack. This is something that cyber professionals, security professionals have been warning the world about for a while. But late last year, there was a German hospital that got hit with a ransomware attack. And so a critically ill patient had to be rerouted to another hospital. And because they didn't receive treatment in time, the patient actually died. So that's something unfortunately tragic that we saw last year. And there's obviously attacks like crypto mining, data breaches, deep fake. We saw a ton of cloud-based attacks. So that's, I suppose, in a nutshell, that's 2020 cyber threat landscape.
And in hindsight, do you think companies are now in a better position to combat these novel cyber attacks and deal with all of these like remote work challenges that came up?
The technology is certainly there. Are organizations using it? I don't think so.
That's a different story.
That's a different story. I'm in a very unique position because I get to leverage not only the threat research that our research team do, but we actually have a incident response team at Checkpoint, and this is a global team, and anybody in the world can call them if they're under an attack, and these guys will help you. Right. And we get, I think last year alone, we had more than 3,000 calls for help from businesses that were either under an attack or had just been breached. 3,000 calls. And what we find is that many of these organizations struggle with basic security, basic best practice. So there's definitely a lack of understanding of how to actually combat the threat landscape today.
So let's talk about new areas for mobile attacks. Which mobile security threat do you view as the biggest threat of all, even in 2021 and going forward?
In 2021, I would say when it comes to mobile based attacks, clearly the number one leader in this space is malicious applications. Right. So malicious applications are being used by cyber criminals, and in some cases, nation state threat actors to spy, to do key logging, to intercept SMS, to be able to send SMS from compromised phones, being able to track users and their location as they're moving, ability for attackers to be able to access your phone and access to your contact details, your meetings, your meeting agenda, being able to manipulate the phone configurations so that any information that is sent from your phone or any data that's sent is diverted. The other thing that we're seeing also is supply chain attacks in the mobile space, right? What I mean by this is that we've seen campaigns where threat actors have actually installed malware on mobile devices before the device was even sold in the shop. So there was a compromise in the supply chain somewhere.
Okay. And what headway has been made into mitigating that threat?
Okay, so I suppose mobile security has come a long way, but the challenge is that businesses and consumers still haven't woken up to the dangers of what a successful attack against a mobile phone can lead to. Most of us use mobile phone for doing our banking, and I would assume you would. I do certainly use it for my banking, for my emailing.
Yeah.
And in many cases, I speak to so many people, executives included, who simply don't have any security around their mobile phone. Right? We have all sorts of security on a laptop, yet we don't have anything on our mobile phone. And there's this misconception as well that for some reason that Apple or Apple-based phones or iOS phones are more secure than Android. Couldn't be further from the truth. They're both being attacked heavily by cyber criminals.
So do you think that's something that's like actually it's going to like make a difference
in terms of where we are with the mobile threat? Look, like I said, so there are definitely security solutions out there, right? It's just a case of awareness around being able to use those security tools that exist in the market. One thing I will tell your audience to do is make sure that you evaluate the security, right? There are various reports out there. You can read these independent reports. Be careful that you're not reading a report that's been commissioned by a vendor themselves. So look for the independent reports and make sure you're getting security that has been proven to be effective against the latest mobile attacks, the latest mobile threats.
Okay. And let's talk about this term called the infection chain. I'm not exactly clear on what it is. So what's an infection chain in the mobile security world?
So, okay. So infection chain, regardless of whether it's mobile security or just cybersecurity in general, infection chain is basically how the attack is actually carried out. Now, if I talk about specifically around mobile phones, then first thing is, okay, what are the different types of attack vectors? Now, there are different types of attacks that can be launched against a mobile phone. I mentioned one of them before, which is malicious applications, right? These are
Yeah.
applications that threat actors will have coded or written, and they'll have malware embedded in it that can do all sorts of nefarious things. But there are other types of attacks, like man-in-the-middle attack. There's an attack called SMS phishing or smishing. So these are different types of attacks, and each of these different types of attacks will have different attack chain. So a malicious application, for example, right? So the infection chain could follow something like this. Now, there'll be various different ones, but initially the attacker will try to convince their victim to somehow install their malicious app from either an application distribution platform like App Store or Google Play, or they will try and get it side loaded. Now, side loading basically simply means that the app itself is not available on Google Play or App Store. It's actually sitting on cyber criminals server, and they will get you to download it directly from there without you knowing or without you realizing. So that's the first thing they try and do is basically convince you. And then the second thing that they will do is that malware, by the way, that or that malicious application. In some cases, they may write the malware themselves, and in other cases, they may not have the skills to write the actual malicious component. So they'll just rent it. They'll rent the infrastructure. Right now, cyber criminals for a long time, cybercrime and the threat landscape for a very long time has been commoditized. So it's a business, and some cyber criminals are making money by selling their attacking tools. So that's an option available. So, for example, if someone wanted to attack an organization, and if they don't have the skills to actually carry out the attack and build all the infrastructure, they can rent that. So that's basically kind of like what an attack, I suppose, an infection chain is. Now, throw into that things like command and control servers. These are basically just servers that belong to the cyber criminals, who will basically use these infrastructure to then either compromise your device. So let's say your device has been compromised, your phone's been compromised, it needs to now talk back to the threat actors, and typically that happens through these things called command and control servers.
Okay.
Okay.
What exactly is that?
So command and control servers are basically just a platform that allows it's a platform that allows threat actors or cyber criminals to be able to carry out their attack. And so let's say if you're, whether it's your laptop, whether it's your mobile phone, whether it's an IoT device, anything that's really connected, once it's compromised, those devices will start to talk back to the command and control server, which is the machine that is owned and operated by the cyber criminals. And then from there, the cyber criminals can carry out whatever it is they want. If they want to continue to spy on you, if they want to launch additional attacks, in most cases, what will happen is the cyber criminals might first try to understand who the victims are, and then they could pick and choose the victims from that point on. Who do we want to now carry out additional attacks against? So, for example, if they go after an enterprise, then they may only be really interested in executives. So even though they may have hundreds of people that they've compromised, they could now look for specific individuals and carry out additional attacks against those individuals. And that can come in the form of added or update to the actual application that they've used to compromise your system. Right. So, for example, maybe it's a phone and a malicious app that you've downloaded, but the app may not have too many functionalities. But once they've identified the victims, they may choose to go after, say, only a handful of individuals. And so they'll do an update on the app so that the app now has more access to your phone. And so they can carry out additional attacks for those specific individuals. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And in order to tackle this infection chain, why do you think it's important to distinguish between mobile device management and mobile threat prevention?
Right. Okay. So mobile device managements have existed for quite some time, and it's a very important tool in an enterprise environment, especially when they have mobile devices, networks of mobile devices. It can help, or mobile device management can help you manage hundreds, if not thousands, of phones from one location. So you can do things like configure settings. Right. You can set policies for those phones, maybe even force the phone to update the software, for example, right?
Yeah.
So that's what a mobile device management does. A mobile threat prevention, on the other hand, will identify and block cyber threats that are targeting your phone. So, for example, exploits where threat actors are looking to maybe steal or manipulate or victimize the phone's user. So that's the distinction between them. One is to actually prevent threats. The other one is just to
Oh,
manage the device.
okay.
And it's
Okay.
really important that that organizations understand the difference between those.
And as you mentioned earlier, 2020 has presented some unique challenges. So, what are some of the novel mobile attack ways that you've seen happening in the industry? Something that really surprised you?
Right. So there was an attack that we uncovered last year. It was the Checkpoint research team that actually uncovered this. It was a brand new attack vector in the wild. I suppose it didn't really surprise me, but it was the first time that we saw it. It is something that we predicted, and we saw it for the first time in the wild. What had happened was the threat actor in this case had actually rented a malware as a service platform, and the malware that they used was a variant of Cerberus. Now, Cerberus is a very nasty malware. So the threat actor first rented this platform. Then they compromised this organization's MDM, mobile device management server. And then using that compromised MDM server, they were able to infect over 75% of the organization's mobile phones. So we're talking about hundreds of phones here, by the way. So
Mhm.
this malware allowed the threat actor to steal passwords, including Google Authenticator. It allowed them to send and receive SMSs, including two-factor authentication. Right. It allowed them to intercept all SMS that was sent, and it was then sent to a Russian IP address. So we know that every intercepted SMS was forwarded to a Russian IP address. It allowed the attacker to install, uninstall applications. They were able to open URLs and copy files from the phone to the attacker's command and control server. And the attacker basically had complete control of these devices. So just think about it for a second. If there's an organization that has that's using the mobile phone to receive two-factor authentication, and you've got your security administrators that are logging into your cloud infrastructure or your Office 365 infrastructure or any other infrastructure, really, for that matter. The ability for threat actors to now be able to intercept those two-factor authentication, the damage that can do is phenomenal, right? So, because of the nature of this attack and the fact that it was just incredibly difficult for this organization to do anything about it, they actually had to factory reset every device that was compromised. There was no other alternative for them.
That this brought about significant damage to the company. Were they able to come out of it?
Well, again, so we don't actually know the full extent of the damage, and they'll probably fall out even into 2021. But what we do know is that the threat actor had access to every SMS, including two-factor authentication. So again, I'll leave that to your audience's imagination as to how much damage the threat actor could have done that possibly could still be lurking in the environment.
And you met this new vector in cybersecurity attacks. Do you think that this is something that we'll see more of in 2021?
The one thing I can tell you is that attackers are looking for every avenue, every avenue as an attack vector. And so I think this is the first one that we've witnessed. I'm sure it won't be the last time we see a mobile device management get compromised and used in this manner.
Okay. And let's talk about how can mobile computing improve the security of IoT devices?
Right, right, right. So first of all, we always say that when it comes to IoT, the S in IoT is security, right? And the joke there is, of course, there is no S, so there is no security in IoT.
Okay.
So I suppose when it comes to IoT and when it comes to mobile phones, these are new attack vectors. They're newish technology. There are new attack vectors here. And one of the things that we've realized with IoT is that the biggest challenge that we see here is firmware, right? The firmware that that most of these IoT vendors are using these days are they tend to be very weak when it comes to security. They typically will either have known or weak passwords. They'll have vulnerabilities in the actual firmware that attackers can leverage. They can use those vulnerabilities to carry out additional attacks to exploit those vulnerabilities. So that's one of the challenges that we're seeing. The other challenge that we see with IoT devices is that most organizations are blind to a lot of the IoT devices in their environment. So they will know about some of them, but there are a lot of shadow IoT devices, these connected devices that are basically dropped into an environment, may have connection to the internet, but it doesn't, but the security teams don't know about it. So it's absolutely critical for organizations to be able to get visibility into those, because if you don't see it, you don't know how to protect it, right? You can't protect anything if you don't even know it's there. So the
Yeah.
number one thing is visibility. You've got to have visibility. And the good thing is that there are various different tools in the market that actually target different industries that will give you visibility. So, for example, in the SCADA environment, in your healthcare sector, in enterprise, in manufacturing, there are vendors out there that can provide you with visibility based on network traffic. Of the devices that you have and the posture of those devices, and then you can leverage that to tighten your security. So that's what I would recommend there.
And speaking of the S in IoT, do you think,
Mhm.
given today's online world, there is such a thing as security in its truest essence?
Well, I suppose it's a bit like this, right? We still lock our doors when we leave home, right?
Yeah.
Why? Right? We do it because we want to make it as difficult as possible for thieves to get into our property, even though we know
Yeah.
if they really wanted to, they could still get into it, right? So that's the same mindset we have to have here. Yes, if someone really wanted to, they could compromise your systems, but the most important thing is that you can't be the low hanging fruit. That's the
Okay.
that's the
Makes
number one advice I want to give you here is don't be that low hanging fruit. Be smart about it. So you do want to install or have security around your, whether it's your IoT, whether it's your mobile device, you need to have some level of security there.
right. Makes sense. Makes sense. And lastly, Ashwin, if there's one thing that you'd like to leave the audience with around improving their security and making like this world a safer Internet of Things world, what would that be?
If there's one thing, I don't think there is one thing. I think there's so many things. When
If
it
you
comes to
had to
cyber,
pick one.
if I had to pick one, it would be to don't make it easy for cyber criminals. Don't be the low hanging fruit. And one of the simple things you can do is make sure that you're always updating your software, whether it's your IoT device, whether it's your mobile phone, whether it's your laptop, whether it's your servers. It doesn't matter. If it's a system that's connected to the internet, you've got to religiously update the system. You cannot allow for threat actors to use known vulnerabilities against your system. So that would be my number one tip. Number two would be get in touch with me and I'll help you.
Okay, okay, perfect. And that reminds me to kind of update my phone software as well.
Yes, please do that.
Right. So thank you, Ashwin. We're at the end of our episode now. It was great having you on the show.
Most welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye.
Bye bye.